Hello and welcome to a very special trade deadline episode of the Father and Son Pastime podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin. How are you?
That's my dad. Dad, we're doing the trade deadline podcast season a little differently this year. We'll see if you like it at home. Please let us know in the comments below if you like this more than last year. We're going to split into two podcasts, and we're going to identify contender needs first. So if you are a buyer, I'm sporting the Royals right now, so they're going to probably be a buyer. We're going to kind of identify those needs, maybe identify some holes. I'm going to do the American League. My dad's going to do the National League. We'll kind of interject if one of us missed something. It's quite possible. There's a lot more buyers this year than sellers. It's a seller's market.
Yeah.
And then we're going to split the podcast. Like I said, we'll end this, and then we'll do another one. We'll post both probably on the same day. And that'll be sort of a prediction podcast of who's going to get traded. So that'll be looking at the sellers and then truly saying this player to this team, like we have conviction in on those picks.
Less than a week away.
It is 6 days, right?
Yes.
Dad, we can talk about that first, I guess.
Sure.
There's been, 3 minor moves in July so far, give or take?
And then good word with minor because, other than the Nationals, I think that was the biggest trade.
I immediately thought of Mike Minor of the Kansas City Royals. I'm just very in the Kansas City mindset. He is no longer an option to get traded. He is not on a contender because he's out of baseball.
Yes.
But yes, we are going to start with the American League. Hopefully between now and when you see this, maybe there has been a fun trade development early, but I don't really like the whole wait to the very last minute process.
Interesting. I read an article this morning stating that there's so many teams on the fence that they don't know if they're going to be buying or selling, that the true sellers are waiting to get top return for their inventory. So right now it's a waiting game to see who is going to be buying, and then all of a sudden I think you may not see any trades until this weekend, and then get some momentum into early next week. But right now people are just at a standstill saying, I got these available, but we're getting all kinds of offers, and we may get more offers from people that want to buy. So there's a lot of people chasing wild cards.
Could be a very fun trade deadline. And just for people at home, this is July 24th. So if you see this in a couple days and crazy shit has hit the fan, maybe that's awesome. I think it'll be kind of relatively quiet until maybe the 28th, 29th, and 30th. Again, we're just going to look at the contender needs. If we feel like hinting at things, we feel like that kind of stuff. I'm personally not going to say names to this team. I'm just going to identify what I think this team needs. Like I said, I'm going to start with the American League. Dad, the Orioles pitching it's not the offense. Offense is great.
Yeah.
They hit home runs, most home runs in baseball. I'm saying they should probably get 2 starting pitchers. That could be a front-end guy, someone that could start a playoff game, maybe an innings eater, because they do have a lot of injuries. I can see like a 2-3, 3-4 guy. So we'll see what they're able to do. I hope they do more than one transaction. I mean, when they have been buyers in the past 15 years, they've really only done one trade. They've only added one piece. I also think they need a stable bullpen arm to add. I mean, pretty much every contending team, you'll hear this. It's pretty much a pattern. Who doesn't need pitching? Who doesn't in some context? I don't think the Orioles will be looking for closer. I think they're really okay with Kimbrel. That's just my opinion. Not that they won't add a seventh inning or 8th inning guy, but I don't see them getting a better or proven younger closer and moving Kimbrel down to a setup role. So that I didn't say a name there, but if you are listening at home and you're a baseball fan, I would say they're out of contention for a certain closer that a lot of people have linked to. Dad, did I miss anything? Do you think any Oriole needs were not addressed?
Just quickly, they have probably the best capital to trade, the strong minor leagues of the Orioles. They probably have 4 or 5 guys that are really good that would be interesting for a trade, and I think they would love to have a left-handed reliever. So I think that is the 2 specifics.
I like that specific. Great point about the Orioles truly being able to get any player available. It's the Orioles' choice. It's really in the Orioles' ballpark, no pun intended, to be the ones to pull the trigger. If you are an Orioles fan, obviously if you know this podcast, we're in Baltimore. And if you get mad at the Orioles because, oh, they didn't get this guy or they didn't get this all-star or anything like that, that's on the Orioles. That's 100% on the Orioles. It's not on the other team saying no because the Orioles didn't offer enough. They could give up Norfolk if they wanted to. They could give up Bowie. Like, there's so much depth on this farm system. It really is just, will they give up those pieces?
One quick little point. New owner in Baltimore. He, I think, is progressive. I think he will be able to, make those moves. I think they were a little handcuffed before, but I think now Elias has enough, leeway to make those trades. So I'm thinking Elias will be active.
I also think it's going to be very interesting to watch the Orioles, and this is going to be a lot of teams I'll say this for. Are they going to go for true rentals, or are they going to go with people that are controllable for maybe a year and a half, 2.5 years, something like that? Because obviously that will dictate the package. I mean, I can hear the Orioles calling a certain team that has a player with 2.5 years of control left, and they want a lot, and the Orioles are like, well, we get 2.5 years of control. But if someone is asking for Jackson Holliday, and that's Jack Flaherty of the Tigers, well, Jack Flaherty is a free agent. I don't think they give up the future for 2 months, 3 months of a player.
Didn't work last year.
Right, but they might be willing to move some of those higher-end prospects for controllable pieces.
Yeah.
So just some thoughts on the Orioles there. I don't mind giving more time to the proven buyers, the proven contenders, the people on the edge. I think will be kind of interesting to see where we go, because they could be fun. They could do nothing. They could sell. They could be buyers. Another proven buyer that obviously will be the Yankees. They're all in on this year. They gave up so much for Soto in the offseason. I openly think they have more needs than the Orioles, which could be great for the Yankees because they'll just mortgage the future. Or, I don't know. I mean, I can also see this team didn't do anything at the deadline last year. They finished above 500, but they weren't in the playoffs. There should be a drive amongst ownership and amongst Cashman and everyone to get in the playoffs at any cost. I would say Jason Dominguez is available. I would say all of your young talent is available. Mm-hmm. They need corner infield help pretty desperately. Rizzo is hurt and is not the Cubs Rizzo that we know. DJ LeMahieu seems to be just not an option anymore. Glaber doesn't know which way is up. And Volpe is a good shortstop, but he hasn't had a proven developmental experience yet. So their infield's really weak. I think they need some bullpen help too. I don't think, even though he became an all-star, I don't think their current closer is someone that I would give the ball to in the ninth in October. Especially since Mariano Rivera is not in the too distant past for the Yankees. So I can see them being aggressive in those corner infield bullpen markets, and I can see, just like I was saying about the Orioles, I can see either way. I can see Reynolds, or I can see people going controllable. Just depends what those teams are asking.
Quick little point. I think the Yankees have been floundering for a while, and their lineup outside of two hitters is not very good. They can't protect Judge, so I think they will be heavy on left-handed hitting players, especially with little power. So I'm thinking of all the teams in the major leagues, the Yankees will make more trades than anyone else.
I think it'd be interesting to watch, and obviously tune into our prediction show to see if he puts his money where his mouth is. But it's going to be hard to predict. I also believe that because they're going to probably be connected to everyone. I mean, if you are Cashman, you are calling every team, even some contenders. Mullins, allegedly is available. Why wouldn't the Yankees at least make that phone call to get a bench piece? Or, I mean, the Yankees are one injury of Soto or Judge away from being done. And I hope that some of these Yankee fans that are the give up the future, I want a ring. It's been 15 years. I hope that they send that message to their ownership and GM. Then I'm going to move on to Boston. Boston openly is my last buyer in the AL East, so I'm curious if you agree or disagree. I think Jays will be sellers, and Rays, I don't know. I think they'll sell. They might buy too. Who the hell knows?
I think Rays will sell a lot.
We'll see. I have them as sellers. I don't have them buying in terms of the names on the market. They might get a first-year rookie, but I don't think that's like a guy on the market. So Boston is exceeding expectations this year. They have not come out strong since the All-Star game. They just beat the Rockies yesterday. as of this recording, but before that they got swept and then lost to the Rockies. So they're not a strong team. The Orioles and Yankees are definitely better, and I think Boston is trying to eye that last wild card spot. I think that's super fair. They need middle infield help. Trevor Story being out for the year. Don't know if he'll ever play in a Red Sox uniform. He's our Chris Bryant. I think we need some middle infield help since Story can't be relied on, and we really thought he was going to. Thank goodness for Rafael Devers' great year. I think there's a first base DH need with some pop. I don't think it's going to be an impact name, like a Bellinger or something like that. I don't see the Red Sox pushing all the chips in. Cassis has been injured. That's kind of why, like a Cassis-level offensive production. I put a starting pitcher that can start a playoff game. Again, you're going for the wild card. You're going for a short series. You need to win. Past that, we'll figure it out. But if you don't have 3 starters you can turn to, and I think the Red Sox have 2 right now that I would trust for the playoffs. And then bullpen help. Bullpen, I feel like I've always said this for the Red Sox for like a decade. Since the Koji Uehara days, they need some help in the bullpen. So obviously a team that isn't as good as the Yankees or Orioles needs more. I think that makes sense. I think I'm interested to see, both as a fan and just as a fan of the trade deadline, to see what Boston does. Because if they lose the next 5-6 games, they might not be a buyer or seller. We've seen the Red Sox buy and sell the Christian Vasquez year. I don't know. As of right now, I would put my money on them buying. I just don't know to the extent of everything. I don't think they'll give up Marcelo Mayer. I don't think they'll give up a top 100 prospect. It's let's improve enough to get to the playoffs, but we're not going to try to beat the Yankees or the Orioles.
I think they're going to push their chips in, and I think they're going to go in and be extremely active. I can see them getting on top of the rotation pitcher to help out, a 3 or 4 guy right there, and I can see them trying to get heavy on some offense, especially in Fenway, to start scoring some runs and everything else. And the manager just signed a 3-year deal.
I know. I love it. I love Cora.
So I think Boston will be active, and I think they'll be definite buyers, sorry.
I like your optimism, but I personally don't think they should give up top-level minor league talent for this year. I don't think this is a good enough roster to make a run in the playoffs. But again, come July 31st, we could be looking at a new and improved roster. But right now, I would say the Red Sox are not that final wild card team.
Okay.
But we'll see what the next week holds.
Yeah.
They want to be, obviously.
Yeah.
Cleveland, bigger surprise than the Red Sox this year. I thought they were nothing because they lacked offensive power. Guess what I'm going to tell them they need? Offensive power. How do they get these runs? I still don't know.
Yeah.
I think they'll also look for starters. This will be rentals. If you know Cleveland baseball, they have youthful pitching. They have always young arms. They develop really well. But they put a lot of their players on innings limits. And I can see Cleveland just we care more about our pitchers than getting 95 wins. We're okay with an 88-win team. We're okay with an 87-win team. So I think they'll go for rentals in that regard. Bo Naylor, I like. I love when brothers play with, on the same team, Josh and Bo. Bo is not, Bo's a Cleveland catcher. He's the Austin Hedges. He's like this fun guy. He doesn't hit at all. I'll say they need catching. I don't think they'll get it. Shortstop help. They've had like 6 guys try shortstop this year. They haven't had a click. Rocchio, I think, is their current starter. Not a great offensive output. And I think they need some outfield help with Quan. He can't do it all. There's a lot of options that could fit that center field, right field role. Quan's solidified in the left. But yeah, I'm kind of curious what they buy. I've listened to people that are Cleveland fans and Cleveland sports writers, and they don't know who is being targeted. They're like a mystery team. Don't expect them to get someone that still has a lot of money left on their deal. I would not expect someone that is locked up for several years. I think every need I said will be rental. I'd be surprised if there's team control past that.
Yeah. Guardians, has a real strong farm system as well. They can dip into that and have, some capital. I'm thinking they will be active, but again, I think you're 100% correct. Not the top of the line players, but just a skosh below and to fill in the gaps. So yes, they will get stronger.
It'll be interesting to see who gets the strongest In the AL Central, before I talk about my shirt, I'll talk about the Twins. The Twins feel like they are like a utility team. Like a lot of people can play multiple positions. They continue to have issues with injuries, surrounding Correa and Royce Lewis. I think they need health more than anything. I do think they could look at really any offensive position for upgrades. If they can somehow deal Christian Vasquez in that, I don't think they will. I think it was just too much of a contract. I think they'll also look for a starter. Again, not the front end. I don't see I'm not supposed to go into names here. I don't see the front end. I'll let you guys know who those names are. So I can see them picking up a back end, quote unquote, innings eater. And almost kind of watching these three teams. I don't know if you guys at home have seen the Spider-Man meme where am I Spider-Man? Are you Spider-Man? Are you Spider-Man? Cleveland, Minnesota, and Kansas City are all going to do that who's going to blink first moment. And whoever improves the most, I think very well could win the division. So it's almost like if we don't have to mortgage our future. We don't have to give up our farm if Cleveland doesn't do anything too, if Kansas City doesn't do anything too. I think Kansas City. Sorry, did you have anything to add to Minnesota?
I would say just a little Scotia, some relief pitching. Again, their bullpen is not the strongest bullpen. They could probably use some help in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings, and there'll be plenty of relief pitchers out there. I think they'll grab some of those middle relievers. Sure.
It's always tough to say who's going to get relievers. I mean, again, who couldn't benefit from a guy with 8 years experience?
And most relievers bring a double-A player.
Right.
So
a flyer, basically.
Yep. Yeah.
Especially if you're be a free agent.
Yes.
Kansas City, in theory, has the most space payroll-wise to improve. Obviously, they're a bigger market. They can pay people. They don't have a lot on the books this year. They really need power. I love my guy Hunter Renfroe. He's not the answer this year. I thought he was. Usually we say, who the hell's pitching for Kansas City? That's their strength. Like their starting pitching is their strength this year. They're going to have some Cy Young candidates on the same team. They don't have great bullpen. I mean, it's really awful.
Yeah.
They've already got Hunter Harvey to address that need early. I think they could get even 2 more bullpen arms. I think they should maybe. But really look for them to I put power and presence in the lineup, specifically an outfielder, basically a big guy or a notable name that's going to be like, oh my God, we got blank. Oh, all right. And it's not just Sal Perez and Pasquantino's job anymore and Bobby Witt's job.
Yep.
We got other power. But yeah, so I don't think, again, they're not going to be buying a shortstop. They're not going to be going for a catcher. So I think outfield power and presence and bullpen.
I was going to say improve that bench.
Sure.
Because right now they have probably 6 players. They need to get some quality people on the bench. Maybe DH, first base, another outfielder, just to give them a little more, support, give some days off going down the stretch. Because it's a young team.
Mm-hmm. As we move to the AL West, I only have 2 buyers in the AL West. I have Seattle and Houston. Texas is going to be the fun seller, if you would think 3 years ago with, the Nationals, just kind of after, I'm not counting the COVID year, but just after their World Series title, they sold Scherzer and Turner, the names. I think Texas is going to have a big sale just coming off their World Series year. But for buyers, Seattle and Houston, I'm going to go Seattle first. It's offense with all capital letters for Seattle. Very similar to Kansas City in that they have great starting pitching. I think Seattle's is just, even though Kansas City's got, oh my God, we got Cole Reagans, he's going to be great. Oh my God, we got Seth Lugo. I think Seattle's pitching is better in a 3-game, 5-game series or 7-game series. Yeah. You pick the length. So I think they should fully focus on offense. I think there's some pitchers, whether back at the end of the rotation in AAA, where they're just going to have to trade. Orioles have depth at a lot of positions, but definitely in the outfield. Seattle has depth in pitching. So I think they'll deal from that to get some offense, and it's really anywhere. It could be at first base. They just released Ty France, and they're bringing up a rookie. He could be great, and in a week I could look like an idiot. He could have 7 home runs next week. I don't think he will. Yeah. You just plug and chug. Second base or third base, there's holes there. DH, Garver turned out to be an awful signing. So, they really can, if they start releasing people like France, which surprised me, and they're willing to cut other people, Jorge Polanco maybe, they could truly be a huge buyer, and we know that GM loves to trade. Doesn't really sign guys that often, but he does love to trade. He got Luis Castillo there, so who knows what they're really going to be after. I think you told me there was going to be Boston was going to be a big team. I have Seattle being a bigger trader than Boston.
I think Seattle have the blockbuster.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're going to go all in on somebody.
They went all in on Castillo. That's a blockbuster, right?
Yeah. I think they're going to, shake the baseball world and bring in some things, because right now they're on the teeter-totter. The Astros caught them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they went, we had a nice lead. And then all of a sudden the Astros, who started really, poorly, have caught up. And I'm just thinking right now they're saying, if we want to get in this thing, we got to add to our lineup.
If they really could have ran away with the division early. I mean, Houston had the worst start that I've seen since they were bad, since before Altuve.
Yeah.
And if they won 2 more games a month each month, that would have been enough distance where Houston could even consider being like, maybe we sell too.
Yeah.
But Seattle needs to be a buyer, or I can honestly see only one of these teams. If Seattle doesn't grab the life by its horns, grab the bull by its horn, and become a buyer, I can see Houston. They're going to buy. They're the Houston Astros running away with that division, and I can see Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City, kind of all getting one getting it first, but the other wild cards, and only one team comes out of the West, and Seattle again misses the playoffs. So they really do need to kind of take care of the whole Northwest fans, because I've been to Seattle. There's no competition baseball wise for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So hopefully treat your fans well.
And the GM likes the deal.
Yeah.
The thing he likes best is the trade.
Yes.
So I think he'll be active, and I think he might make the first trade. So, yeah. Look for that.
That last team I have, obviously in the AL being a buyer, like I just said, was Houston. Houston's had a down year. They bounced back. Again, I don't think that they would want to be higher than this. I think even 90 wins at this point, it seems like a lot for Houston. Almost like maybe the first to 90 between those two teams make the playoffs. Maybe it's 88.
Yeah.
Releasing Jose Abreu, I think, was one of the biggest moves for them, because Jonathan Singleton's a nice guy. He is not who I want in the big moments. So I think a first base with a DH, obviously option, maybe Singleton can do the bench piece, and every fourth day Singleton plays, but majority of the time it's this guy. I still think they always, I've said this every year, and Jake Myers comes out of nowhere, McCormick comes out of nowhere. I think they need an extra outfielder. Maybe it's a bench player that can play a little outfield. And I also think they need another starter. They've had so many injuries this year in their pitching staff. If everything kind of comes back together and Verlander gives one last effort, I can see this being like that team of destiny, Verlander's last ride. So I think they'll get like a number 2 or number 3 starter that obviously could take a playoff game, not game 1, not game 2, but could give 5 or 6 innings in October. And at the end of the day, it's Houston. We know what that means in the playoffs. If they get in, they are the most feared team. It's not the Orioles. It's not the Red Sox. It's not the Yankees. It's not whoever comes out of the Central. Yeah. It's Houston. They're the proven track record. They're the bad guy on the block. And obviously, I think I have them in the ALCS every year until they're not. So they're going to be buyers, and I think they'll be big buyers.
I think on the top of the list is the first baseman, the little pop.
Yeah. That's all I have for the American League. So people at home, I will be more of now the support role for my dad as he goes into the NL to see and identify needs of contenders.
What's uncanny, you went verbatim with my notes on every team.
So you don't have any additional contenders. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
But your needs and everything.
Yeah.
Everyone.
We are good fans and we're good podcasters. Follow us on YouTube and all our social media. It's in the comments.
That was a blatant plug. All right, NL. NL has just a mess in the middle. They have people that are leading the divisions, but right now I think they got 6 or 7 teams that could end up being a wild card. And those are people that you're like, okay, what are you going to do? And there's some teams that have never been in this situation. Hats off to the Pirates. Yeah, I mean, God bless them. I hope they have enough chutzpah to, to make some moves and everything else. But just, I mean, when I did this list, and I think I'm pretty thorough, but there's teams on a teeter-totter, and this weekend will determine a lot of people in or out. So let me just start there. Start with the Phillies. When they had the injuries to Harper, and I forgot who the other player was that was injured, that scared everybody, and they're saying, we may want to fortify that bench deeply, and I think they need some relief pitching. Right now, if the starter comes their way, 4 or 5, that's not bad. But right now, it's the bench that I think the Phillies would love to add to. They're in the driver's seat. They're a fun team. A lot of home runs. Defensively, it wouldn't be bad to have a defensive outfielder to come in late innings. But right now, I'm thinking the Phillies are in the driver's seat in the NL. But I think if they want to fine-tune, and, Dombrowski's a great person to trade. I think he'll make minor deals to fortify the Phillies like he does every year. I'm looking forward to see what the Phillies do.
I think I might have the Phillies being more aggressive or maybe going after higher-end talent than you do. I don't think it's a defensive replacement in the outfield. I think it's a bona fide starting center fielder with power and glove. And I also, did you say anything about the bullpen?
I did.
Yep. Do you think it'll be 6, 7, 8 guy or more of a closer?
I say 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, and probably a left-hander.
Okay. I was thinking more 8 or 9. I'm trying to think who they've experimented with a couple closers this year. Jose Alvarado is their current closer, but Jeff Hoffman's had 9, Soto's had 2, Strom's had 1, so Anthony Dominguez has had 1. Ricardo Pinto is no longer on the team, has had a save. That no one's above 20. So I think either someone that says, this is my role, let me have it. They were linked to Josh Hader in the offseason. There's always been trade rumors of a closer coming to Philly. I think maybe they'll pick up some bullpen pieces. I mean, again, who wouldn't?
Right.
But I can see them really looking at an 8 or a setup guy that's phenomenal or just a lockdown closer that's available.
And some of the games the Phillies had such a lead, the relief pitchers don't get saves because they got a 5-run lead.
That's super fair.
Yeah. So, but I think the Phillies right now, fun team. Offensively, they do extremely well. You could use some help along the edges, which is probably a good way of saying that. But I think they're looking good, and I do think they'll be active. Atlanta, got to have an outfielder. I think very much of an offensive-minded outfielder to come in and fortify that lineup a little bit. They just have not been steady enough to climb that ladder. They've always stayed, 5, 6 games behind the Phillies. They're in for the wild card right now, but they need to make probably a big move to fortify that lineup and score more runs. That's my take on the Braves.
I had a power hitting outfielder or a presence, if you will. I also had a pitcher. It's really tough. Braves fans, I sympathize. You've lost your best player and your best pitcher, Spencer Strider, for the season. I mean, really making the playoffs with those 2 losses is an accomplishment. Obviously, for a recent champion like yourself, that's not enough. Please have a slightly longer memory. When Acuna got injured a couple years ago, that's when you won the World Series because your GM was so motivated at the deadline to go get pieces. The Jock Petersons, right? Yeah. Eddie Rosario.
Yeah. And they got Rosario back.
Right. Obviously, he's older now and all that stuff. But I do think I have one name that I will share in the next podcast. Hint, hint. Check that out. But I think a lot of stuff will be, like you said, for the Phillies, edges, but a lot of consistent improvements. And again, we saw how frequently they traded in the offseason. They would get somebody, flip them. Get somebody, flip them. Yeah. So, again, 6 days left. Just because the Braves trade for someone July 27th, don't think he's on the August roster. So I'll be using pencil for all my Braves trades, not pen.
Yeah. Great addition. I think that Braves general manager, he's loves to trade as well. I can see him, if he pulls the trigger on a major trade, there'll be other minor trades to follow. Mm-hmm. So he'll be extremely active. The Mets have surprised some people. eking up that in the third place and everything else. I think they need some more offense, probably power as well. I'm glad they're keeping the key pieces right now because at one point they were having a little bit of a yard sale. So I think this year that they can add some power to the outfield, and I'm thinking the bullpen is not the best. They might add 2 or 3 guys to the bullpen and maybe a 4 or 5 starter as well. So right now they have more pieces of need than strength. Let's see what they do. The farm system's not the greatest, so they're going to have to out and be pretty dynamic with their trades. But I think they will have a lot of activity just to make sure that roster is stronger. And I'm thinking power, bullpen are the 2 main emphasis.
It's funny to me that I would say right field is a bit of the need. What I've said on this podcast before is this upcoming offseason, I think the Mets are in for Juan Soto at any price. They want to steal him from the Yankees. That said, Soto's not the option this year. I do think a right fielder, DH, bench player, I'm with you there. I literally said also a 4-5 starter. I will also give the other side of that coin that if the Mets do get hot in these next 6 days, if they go 5-1, they go 4-2, watch out for get the ace. Grab the ace. No one's seeing it. Everyone thinks it's going to be the Dodgers or the Orioles or whatever. The Mets have stuff too. They acquired stuff last deadline. Don't forget let's pay down Scherzer's contract and let's pay down this contract to get a better prospect. So the Mets have, again, they're not as loaded as the Orioles or or the Pirates. No one is, but the Mets could be a sneaky. Let's get a Crochet. It would not surprise me. I know we're not supposed to say names, but I think it'll also be more my dad getting a 4 or 5, padding the bullpen. But then everyone's gone into the offseason. They're going to have to completely rebuild their rotation in the offseason.
But they have a little bit of spare cash.
They have never not had spare cash. Yes. Never,
All right.
never.
Next on my list is the Brewers.
Same.
Probably, you have to give the Brewers credit. They lost their manager. Yeah. They lost their best pitcher. They've lost some pieces, but they're one of the most fundamental teams right now. They win a lot of games 3-2, 2-1. Their bullpen is outstanding right now, and it's really a bunch of cast-offs that they've made a solid bullpen. Their starting lineup is aggressive, and a new manager, Murphy, has done a great job. But I'm thinking they need probably 3 or 4 or 5 starter. The starters now are kind of like they weren't great before, like Colin Ria.
He's great now.
He is great now. But going down the second half of the season, will those pitchers last and still be effective? I think the Brewers will probably be in a starting pitching market, and again, they may add, try to get some pieces for the bench. But right now, of all the surprise teams in baseball, the Brewers are, I think, by far number 1, and I think that manager is doing a great job. Fundamentally, very strong, very aggressive on a base pass, and I think that's their level of baseball, and it's working. They're running away with the Central.
I just want to check one little thing. You took the under of the Milwaukee Brewers this year, and I took the over. So yeah, that's a win for me. Dad, I agree with everything you said. However, I want to add that really in the past 24 hours, some bad news with Christian Yelich. Looks like he might have to have back surgery and be out for pretty much the year.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to how maybe you should, but I will add to it if you don't. The Cardinals and Pirates should take full advantage of that huge window and push. But that means they're going to have to add a legitimate outfielder. Whether it's a left fielder, whether they move people around. Obviously, a lot of their players, Jackson Chourio was supposed to be a center fielder, and he's played right field most of the year. So obviously people can move around in that outfield. But if Christian's out, like true out, and even if it's a threat of being out, you got to go get an outfielder. So I think that's their priority, but exactly what you said about there's no threatening. You could have great ERAs and whips and all that good stuff with the Brewers, but their names aren't imposing. Like the Brewers are like a first-round out team. Sure, They won 88 games or whatever it was, but we got a better rotation. Our offense is better than their pitching. I think you need a experienced playoff starter.
I'm with you 100% because I think the guys who have been winning with smoke and mirrors, I think sooner or later they may tire out, whatever. They really need to reinforce the troops. But Murphy, who coached at Notre Dame, coaches this team like a college baseball team. You run. You're on first, you go to second, first to third. I think he's really clever on using the strengths of the Brewers, and the Brewers are having fun. So I think, again, if Yelich goes off, they need a power hitting outfielder, and there's plenty on the market. Brewers have a farm system as well. I think they're going to be active because they see a window of opportunity to go further in the playoffs. So, yeah.
I will say, just to do a little hint, it's a very feisty team, so I'm going to have a very feisty player going there. Next.
They are
I like hinting. I got to get people to listen to the other podcasts.
You're doing a great job. Cardinals. I think starting pitching and bench. Right now, their lineup 1 through 7 is okay. Around the edges, they need some. I think their outfield is athletic, but boy, they'd like to have a little more power in the outfield. I'm thinking pitching with some of the injuries they've had and everything else. I would definitely get probably 2 starters. And they should be active because again they can creep up. And they started poorly, but have had a good steady climb since the beginning of the year. But I think pitching is right now their weakness.
I agree, and I'm going to add to that. 2 points. One's a joke. One is serious. They should trade for a better manager. I don't like Ali Marmol. I don't think he's good for St. Louis. Just put Yachty in already.
If they don't make the playoffs, he's gone.
Fair. I think that's a super fair expectation. I think the Cardinals are one of few teams, I mean the Orioles are this team too, where they could trade some of their controllable pieces that maybe haven't worked out for in trades. Like Dylan Carlson's always been in rumors. They got this guy from the Rays, but Matthew Liberatore hasn't really worked out for anyone, so maybe another team can fix him. So look for common, maybe recognizable names, especially for St. Louis Cardinals fans, in these swaps. And you said power in the outfield. I said veteran presence. Not necessarily power, but like it just seems like it's a very youthful team. And Arenado and Goldschmidt can't do it all. And Goldschmidt's going to be a free agent, don't forget.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Cardinals will be able to sign everybody.
Yeah.
So I think someone else has got to take on that role of if Arenado and Goldschmidt are taking care of the young infielders, someone's got to take care of the young outfielders.
Yeah. I agree, and there's plenty of veteran outfielders out there that they can get
for cheap too.
Yeah, and great.
Here's a double-A catcher.
Yeah, they could use a little speed, but yeah, again, fundamentally they have risen to the challenge, and it's kind of like a fun team to watch. But yeah, next team is the Pirates. Another, I really admire the Pirates. They have 2 really good starting pitchers that will. If you go into a 3-game series, Pirates should take 2.
Yeah.
But again,
I think that's what they're going for.
The back end of that starting rotation needs help. Pirates again have a strong minor league system. They need a little more offense, and I think the infield could use a little help as well. They have some, not O'Neill or anything like that, but maybe second base, first base could is a little iffy. They could use a little power, but again, it's around the edges. 3, 4, 5 starters, a little power in the infield, and maybe some bench.
I said everything you said. You hinted at second base. I said definitely improve second base.
Yeah.
They're just kind of running through different options at this point. My joke there is they need a catcher but won't trade for one. Hasn't been a good catcher there since Jason Kendall. Both of their recent draft picks have been catchers. Henry Davis is not good, at least in the majors. I know he's still young. He was a 1-1 pick. I think they're
shifting him to the outfield.
There's talks about that, but he's not big. I mean, he's my size. He's heavier than me, but he's 6 foot.
Yeah.
And I think that's in spikes. So I don't know what his arm is like openly.
Yeah.
And then their other Rodriguez catcher is out for the year. He's injured. So I think they should get some catcher. They got Yasmani Grandal there in his twilight years.
And the catchers are on the market.
There are a few catchers on the market, but I don't think they will add anyone because I think they'll prioritize a power hitting outfielder, bench, and pitching. Yeah.
Yep, I'm with you. Brings us to the Dodgers.
Oh, what? No Cubs? Sorry. Had to joke, people. Had to get it in there. How many, before you get in the Dodgers, obviously Dodgers are buyers. They always have been and probably always will. How How many teams in the NL West do you have being buyers?
3.
Interesting. Okay. I know which one we are slight. I want to make an argument for, so go ahead and do your 3.
Sure. Dodgers. I did a lot of research on the Dodgers, and everyone is saying, hey, with the pitching and kind of like all the injuries are coming back, and they're really leery about going into the last 2 months with, pitchers who are coming back from rehab. So right now, in my opinion, they're going to be market for starting pitching, especially 3, 4, 5, just to have healthy arms to get them through the last 2 months of the season. And they probably use another outfielder, with a little bit of power and everything else. Getting that gap of Mookie being not there. So I'm thinking between outfield help and pitching, 2 main places to look for them to improve.
I think it's very interesting just to say this about the Dodgers. We really expected a 110-win team here. We're not going to get that. We probably won't get 100.
Yeah. The Phillies will have a better record.
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously they'll have a better year next year with a full healthy pitching staff. I mean, they had a lot of injuries this year. I hope when Kershaw comes back, he's able to contribute. There are some of those pitchers that were on Tommy John last year, had some surgery in the offseason, or like an August-September call-up. That, in a way, is going to feel like a trade acquisition, like, oh, he's back and all that stuff. So I think, yes, I do have them going after front-end starters. They are also just like the Cardinals and Orioles where they could trade from their current roster. I mean, we're seeing that with James Paxton. I think he'll be moved. I mean, he's DFA'd, so he will be moved to kind of free up some money, to free up some other things. I think their infield needs help. Gavin Lux has never been the player everyone thought he could be. Mookie Betts, I think when he comes back from his injury, will play second. And they'll have a shortstop, or they should have a shortstop, or Mookie, they have some internal options at shortstop they can use. Maybe Mookie is at second.
And get an outfielder.
There's a lot of things, obviously, they can move around.
Moving pieces.
Obviously, Muncie's also hurt. He could play second. I mean, he's played third in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, some poppy player that can play infield and DH, infield and outfield, whatever it might be.
Utility guy. I'm
presence.
Yeah. All right. Next on my list is the Padres.
Yeah.
Outfield.
Not more shortstops?
This guy, 2 shows daily.
More shortstops.
Yeah. Very cute. Very cute. I just set him up. My job is to be the straight man. But, Padres, another team that kind of surprised a few people. They have some superstars. They're not the greatest team players in the world, but I'm thinking along the way they need to fill that back part of that lineup. They probably could use some relief pitching along the way, but right now, if they're serious, and I think with that crazy GM, I think they'll be in the market to add, and then I think for sure the pitching and outfield will be a big part of it.
Openly, San Diego is a wild team to me. They're going to go for the wild card. Their GM's wild. Everything's about this team is wild. They have the number 2 attendance record in baseball this year. They got wild fans. It's a different place. I will not have any of my predictions in the next podcast going to the Padres. That doesn't mean I don't think they're going to acquire people. I just have no clue who they're going to acquire. Tatis is kind of hurt, right? So a 4th outfielder I think is great. I don't know if you've read this stuff about Yu Darvish. It's very cloak and dagger. He's been out for like 10 days now in a personal family matter. Who knows what that's about? I would have to assume you got to go get a pitcher to kind of replace a Darvish level player.
Yeah, I agree. It is weird that the Japanese folks, the translator for one of the pitchers of the Cubs, they just fired him, and for
Was he betting? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a good situation, but it was a Suzuki, it was the outfielder.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they fired him, and it was all of a sudden. So with the Japanese players, something's not happening, and we got to connect the dots with that. But yeah, they're not making the transition to America very well.
Obviously, Darvish has been here, so I think his stuff is probably specific
maybe?
to him. Yeah, I mean, that's all that we're able to do, and I think Japanese culture is very private when it comes to, I'm not speculating here, but possible shame things. I don't know. So I think that's why he's being very private about it. Very funny story, though, just to lighten the mood. Some fan ran into him at a San Diego hardware store and had him signed a paint stick. And I don't know what Darvish was doing there. Buddy, you can pay people to fix whatever's in your house, man.
He's a do-it-yourselfer.
But, I mean, it's just like, you're in the mid-season. What do you... Anyways, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So yeah,
maybe he's building a deck and he needed a few weeks to build a deck.
Again, I don't think so. He has money. He can afford 100 decks.
I know. Just try to be light.
I know. So was I.
All right, my last team is the Diamondbacks. They weren't doing well, and all of a sudden they came back. They won a big series versus the Cubs the other day. They're slowly inching back. Last year they were in the same position, ended up being the last wild card, and going to the World Series. So I'm thinking that may have something to do with it. They have a little bit of confidence. They need some pitching as well, and they probably use some bench. And, probably another outfielder. But right now, I think relief pitching is big on the Diamondbacks, a platter. And I just think that they, if everything goes well, will be in a hunt again for the last wild card space.
Agreed. Because of their current record and because of there's a lot of teams above them, we got the Central. I don't know how aggressive they'll be. I had hoped they would have a better season. Corbin Carroll's having a miserable season. There's no better way to put it. Do you have any big names going to them?
No, but I have a lot of fringe players going and beef up that. Their payroll's not the biggest in the world, but I say if they're serious, they need to add to the bench and relief pitching and all that stuff. Right now they're okay, but boy, they could use a left-hander, and then also probably the setup for the 8 and 9, big part, and then just play better. They have some athletic people, but again, I think you're correct with a lot of people that had high expectations didn't come through. So it made another outfielder and, have Corbin sit once in a while.
I mean, the Mariners are struggling because Julio, was doing poorly. Now he's injured.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not fair to that player, obviously, when a whole team's success is counting on you. Bobby Witt felt that last year. He's got a little bit of pitching support now. You got to build around people.
Yeah.
I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to be building around Corbin right now because obviously he's not.
Yeah. He's not the starter.
He's not a rookie of the year
guy.
He's having a sophomore slump. Again, I don't think just like the Padres, there'll be fringe buyers. I don't know anyone that's perfect fit for the Dodgers anymore. Dad, that's the end of your list, right?
Yes.
I will say that the San Francisco Giants are a question mark. And here's what I'm going to say. I have them almost both as buyers and sellers. They have some interesting contract situations, right? Opt-outs, Chapman, Snell. Yeah. Snell's not having a great year. There's some injuries. But they also have already put so much into this year, right? I mean, the center fielder they also got from, I want to say Korea, not Japan, because I know you were just on that. He got injured early. He was having a great year. He's out for the season. Lamont Wade is not... I mean, he's got a great average, but no power now. It's very interesting. Elliot Ramos has been, out of this world call-up. He's been fantastic. There's flashes of brilliance. There's duds. And isn't that team where, well, if we can spark the fire, one or two players, maybe we can get back in the hunt, or do we trade the brilliance? And a lot of the people that could bring back quality returns are either controllable, or they're just not expensive. So I don't know if the Giants want to sell. The Giants are soon going to be the only thing in the Bay Area. So I don't know. Maybe they're hopeful to work out the options with Chapman and Snell and try to hope for a better year. Plus, they're getting some of their injured pitchers back towards the end of the year too. Yeah. Robbie Wright.
They were so aggressive in the offseason. They had a great offseason. Just didn't pan out. I'm thinking that because there's so many teams they need to jump over, it might be too much to ask.
It is a tough ask, and I believe their record's probably in line with the Reds or the Cubs, who I do have as sellers. For some reason, the Giants feel a little different than the Cubs or Reds. I don't know why. Expectations for both those teams all three teams were kind of similar.
I think the Giants have more talent.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And the Giants obviously have proven they have money. Again, not going to put Cody Bellinger to the Giants. However, would that be crazy and be like, oh my God, yeah, let's go Giants. They're gonna contend. This next step, we're recording this again on the 24th. the next 6 days, if they go 5-1, absolutely the Giants are buyers. So just like the Nats in 2021, that last week of July will really dictate how well they do. But I wasn't ready to make them a full seller yet, so they're a contender with a question mark. If that's a cop-out, I apologize. That was our only team that we had different, so otherwise we've been really in lockstep for our needs and contenders.
Yeah, it's a little eerie to go through in the same thought process and everything else.
Come on, ESPN. Come on, MLB. Like, let's go. Hire this father and son team. Just like the Griffies, we're good for baseball. We're going to cut this right now, right before an hour, which is great. Make it digestible into 2 parts for you all. Again, the second part is going to be trade predictions. If you really like that and get into our kind of crazy theory heads, come on in. If you just wanted to hear this, that's fine too. Please give us a like or a comment. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We are at Pastime Podcast _ on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X. And we are the Father and Son Pastime Podcast on Facebook.
Thanks for watching.